Welcome, everyone, to a breaking news special edition of the Husker Online live show. Robin Washut here with the one and only Steven Sipple. Sean Callahan, if you're wondering, is still enjoying his vacation out in Hawaii. So it's going to be up to us to kind of recap what has been a huge day.
Yeah.
A seismic day in Nebraska athletics with the unexpected departure of athletic director Trev Alberts. News started to pop up around 10 a.m. Central Time, coming down from College Station, where reports were surfacing. The Houston Chronicle was the first to break the report, and several others followed up with confirmation that Trev was very close to taking the same position as the athletic director at Texas A&M. And it was several hours before it actually got confirmed. I think shortly after between 5 and 5:30, Texas A&M released an official statement with the graphic you see there announcing Trev Alberts as their newest director of athletics. And so, Sip, I know I personally was very much caught off guard. I think most Nebraska fans were caught off guard. What about you?
Yeah, I was caught off guard. It wasn't, Trev Alberts to Texas A&M speculation. I heard nothing. It wasn't a topic. Nobody asked me about it. It wasn't anything on any. I don't know that it was on. I mean, I know athletic department officials at Nebraska were blindsided. I know that. Now, I did talk to a few, I'd say, people in the industry who had heard, and apparently found no reason to let me know. But I
such is life.
Had heard, and it wasn't like it was official. They just coaches in the A&M athletic department talking to other coaches, asking about Trev Alberts, not saying that he had the job, but they're asking about him. So I think it's been in the works.
Yeah. So I guess now the immediate question with all of this is why? Why now? I mean, just when you thought there was positive momentum building with Nebraska athletics, the football team seemed to be finally getting that foundation and building towards becoming a championship level program. Men's basketball is finally doing something, showing some sort of pulse, and is on the brink of an NCAA tournament. Women's volleyball is women's volleyball. Women's basketball nearly won the Big Ten championship. Like, everything was going well. And then all of a sudden, just before the men's basketball team heads up to Minneapolis to play in the Big Ten tournament, this drops, and it just completely sours, I think, for a lot of people, all of those positive vibes, that momentum that was finally starting to build around here, because now Nebraska's left in the complete unknown. They don't have a full-time president. They have a brand new chancellor. They don't have a director of athletics. Where's the leadership right now? And what do you think spurned this for Trev to make this type of decision at this point?
Well, I think you might have answered it a little bit.
Just the instability.
Yeah, they don't have a president. They've been without a president really since late August. That's when the Ted Carter to Ohio State news broke. Now, he didn't formally take over to Ohio State till January 1, but that was late August, Robin. I mean, that's a while ago. Trev, he did come on a video with us last week. Yeah. With Sean and I,
like 2 days ago,
and he said something that really caught my attention when he was talking about the $450 million Memorial Stadium, we'll call renovation project, and he expressed a measure of frustration that there was no president. They got to kind of work through this with no president. He said it'd be nice to get that taken care of. That was frustration. I think that played a role in this. There's why. I mean, you asked the question why. I think there's that. I've heard that there was maybe he felt a lack of support in the wake of the civil lawsuit brought by Ashley Scoggin, pretty much a bombshell civil lawsuit last month, and that. I mean, that's not going away. There's also, think about a big picture element of this. He was an athletic director in the Big Ten. Now he's an athletic director in the SEC. He's 53 years old. Trev is a climber. He wants to climb. He's not, he's a very ambitious person. He might have his designs on a big job, like a commissioner type job.
Yeah, he's put his hat in the ring for other types of positions like that.
Yes, he did. He put his hat in the ring. I don't know to what level we reported. Oh, I know I wrote it in Tunnel Talk that he put his hat in the ring for the chief of the college football playoff, CFP committee, to head that committee. I think he was interested in the Big Ten commissioner job too. So all of that makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, it makes sense to me. That's what sources were saying all day, that those types of things, nobody knows for sure, because that's the guy right there that knows. He hasn't said much.
No.
You know?
But like you said, in the statements that he has put out, I do think that it was extremely telling that in that A&M press release, the very first thing he mentions is the stability within Texas A&M's leadership and the fact that their university president's vision aligns with his. He feels like he has support. So like people immediately thought the money might have been an issue. Sure, he's getting a little bit of a pay raise, like, but I don't know. I don't think that was much.
He's making a lot of money. He just got a huge raise.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I don't think that had to do with it. I think it's there's other motives in play there beyond just getting a perceived pay raise and a step up in the athletic director ranks. I think he has bigger goals in mind with that. And then I also think that Nebraska's situation right now, from a university leadership standpoint, is a problem. And then now for Nebraska, okay, your athletic director's gone. Who's making that hire at this point?
Well,
you have an interim president.
They got to hire a president first.
Yeah. And so like Nebraska's just kind of in limbo right now to the worst case scenario with how they're going to address this next. I know the interim president sent out his press release and said that they expect to make a hire soon. To me, I think the next step is just a stopgap interim, just get us through this sports year, and then we're going to take our time and actually find a good long-term hire.
That's one way to do it.
What do you think?
Well, that's one way. It's complicated. It's way above my pay grade to manage the university. I don't, logic would dictate that you have to have I would think you'd have to have a president in place, since currently as the leadership is structured at the university right now, the AD reports to the president. There's an interim president. I imagine that was frustrating for Trev. We didn't mention that. Oh, we kind of mentioned it, that it was an ideal setup with Ted Carter and Trev. And, again, Ted Carter's at Ohio State now. If you go back to when Trev was hired at Nebraska in July of 2021, July 14th of 2021, look at the comments he made about Ted Carter. He gave proper credit to Ronnie Green, who was the chancellor at the time, but he laid it on thick with Carter.
Ted was the front man.
Yeah, Ted was the front man. They jibed, and Trev liked that setup, the prospects of the setup where he would report to Ted. Ted left. Now there's, now what? So I don't think there's any question that feeds into into all this.
So they have all that to figure out. And then there's the ripple effect issue of what does this move by Alberts mean for the rest of the chain of command within the athletic department, particularly with their football program. Matt Rule, you go back and listen to his introductory press conference, basically said that he came to Nebraska because of Trev Alberts and Ted Carter. Neither of them are here. Ronnie Green's not here.
Right.
Like all the people that were pivotal in bringing Matt Rule to Nebraska are no longer in the picture.
Isn't that so?
And so what's he thinking right now? I mean, I know that he's talked about how he's here for the long haul,
right?
This kind of 8-year build, whatever.
No, it's
but does this change the dynamic with him?
Of course it does. I mean, Robin, all you got to do is put yourself in his shoes. I mean, when you lose a boss, I've lost bosses. When you lose a boss and a new boss comes, there's natural trepidation. Now, on the other hand, Rule's making, I don't know, $10 million a year.
He's in a good situation.
He's in a good situation. In theory. But no, you saw that picture Sean tweeted out with Ronnie Green and Ted Carter and Trev, and only one of those guys is left.
Just crazy.
It really
It's crazy.
It is. And this is a university, unfortunately, an athletic department that's been kind of dogged by instability.
Yeah. And that picture embodies everything that dogging is about.
Yeah.
Like the fact that the most influential people within your leadership system it's a revolving door right now.
It has
been a problem.
It has been for some time.
That's a problem. That's a huge reason why Nebraska athletics is where it is right now.
And
totally the hole agree. That they're currently having to dig themselves out of.
I know. Rob, I don't like to be a reactionary. I don't like to overreact to things. And I was thinking about right before we came on, as a matter of fact, like I always want to say, look, he's just an administrator. They'll get another administrator and it'll all work out. My second thought is, no, it hasn't. Mm-hmm. They've had some bad ADs. I mean, Eichhorst was a disaster, and he hired a disaster coach. Doubt. There's no guarantees it's going to work out. Yep. We saw it. We've lived it. We've had one bad AD for sure, and he hired a bad head coach. There's no guarantees here. That's why. And we're going to hear from Husker fans, and I'm sure they're frustrated.
Yeah. So I guess we'll go to questions now, Megan.
Is there anything else?
Well, yeah, we can get to some more stuff. Oh, here's one thing. With just talking about the coaching chain reaction with that. I know a lot of people are asking, like, what does this mean for Fred Hoiberg?
Yeah.
He's a much different situation than Matt Rule was. He was not hired by Trev Alberts. He was a Bill Moose hire. Mm-hmm. And, honestly, their paths had some friction, where they had that meeting.
Trev and
Fred, a couple of years ago, after a kind of disastrous start to the Hoiberg era, Trev met with him and said, hey, there's some parameters and some guidelines that you need to meet. And some metrics that you need to meet. We're going to renegotiate your salary, and we're going to take away some pay, and you're going to have to earn it back. So Fred did that, and I think everything was going pretty well. But this move, I don't think, has nearly the repercussions with Hoiberg as it potentially could with Matt Rule. Just because Fred came here, he didn't come here for Trev Alberts. Matt Rule came here for Trev Alberts.
Yes, large, different dynamic.
Yeah.
You would say, I don't mind saying, Trev probably handled the Hoiberg situation fairly well.
He did, in retrospect. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, now, I would see why Fred would bristle. It's just what I said. When you hear people say, there's a lot of coaches over there that aren't upset today. They're fine. Well, that's because he's a boss.
Yeah.
And
he told them things they didn't want to hear.
Right. He had to hold Fred accountable. He had to say no to people. He had to take money away sometimes. Yep. And of course that's going to cause friction. So you're right though. Your point is well taken. It's a way different dynamic for Fred than it is for Rule.
Okay.
So let's get to questions.
Yeah. All right.
I am blaming Sean too, by the way.
Yeah. First question from Team No One. Thank you for the super chat. Sean leaves for one show and things go to heck. I blame Sean. Yes, Sybil and I both agree with you. Everything was great until Sean decided to go to Hawaiian paradise for a week. Just kidding. It's a much needed, much deserved vacation for him that unfortunately now he's 5 hours away trying to keep tabs on the biggest story of the Nebraska sports year. So we're holding down the fort though. We're doing okay.
We're fine.
At least we're trying our best until the big man gets home.
Okay.
Next question from Bob Johnson. Thank you, Bob. Trev, you are right there with Peterson and Eichhorst. Take his name off the stadium now. Doing this while every coach is gone is bull bleep. Coward.
What meaning gone? Meaning?
Well, when Rule was in Scotland, Fred's up in Minneapolis. Amy's getting ready for the NCAA tournament. So, I think that's kind of more what he was talking about. Kind of doing it without anybody knowing. Is more what the point is.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see why there are Husker fans, Rob, that have a hard time reconciling this with Trev's sort of, if you go back, I always go back to his introductory press conference where he talked about his mom, no bigger Husker fan. He shed tears that it was a very emotional day. He didn't seem like a guy who had designs on leaving ever.
Well, and he's one of Nebraska's own. Like he's the guy that has his name in the stadium. He's the guy when they play highlights of Nebraska legendary teams, they show him, you know, and he was kind of embodied everything that Nebraska wanted to get back to.
100%.
And so for him to do this in this manner, a lot of Nebraska fans feel like scarred and betrayed. And that's the type of anger. Like Bob's calling him a coward and how it's BS.
You're hearing that.
Our message board, our Twitter mentions are flooded with that exact same reaction. Nebraska fans are hurt right now.
Right.
And I don't blame them.
No, I don't blame them. And I got to go back on something. I just kind of contradicted myself when I said, you thought maybe he'd be, I said, I thought maybe he'd be here forever. Right after I said he's a climber and he's looked at different things. I didn't think, I guess it'd be this soon.
Yeah.
I mean, this is 3 years.
2.5 years, roughly.
2.5 years. Okay. You know, 2.5 years in. That's soon. And that's probably what I'm getting at more than anything. You know, maybe he had designs on being the head of the college football playoff, but that could be at age 60, you know, and he's 7 years from now. It
seemed like there was a rush, but I think with the way the landscape, how quickly things are changing. Like I just remember going back and listening to him on the radio and all the interviews. Like he just has constantly talked about like the need to be able to stay competitive and keep up in this very rapidly changing landscape of collegiate athletics.
Well, let's just address that quickly. Nebraska is on solid ground financially.
Yeah, but
A&M is what?
Significantly more.
Money grows out of that. Money grows out of the ground.
Yes, they do.
And he's not going to have to worry about fundraising at Texas A&M. You do have to worry about it in Nebraska. And he talks about that because what? He's got that $450 million renovation project at Memorial Stadium. He's got to raise money for a lot of money for. I think $200 million in private money, and then NIL. You got to raise millions of dollars for NIL to pay players, and that at Texas A&M, you won't have to worry about that. One of the fundraisers here, former fundraisers, told me the 12th Man Foundation, which is the fundraising arm or one of the fundraising arms for A&M athletics, has 40 fundraisers. 40 athletic department fundraisers. 40. That's an industry. That's what I mean. I mean, he won't have to worry about that part. Still, it's curious to me. It still seems a little surreal to me.
Yeah. And like there are consequences with that. Like you got a bunch of people paying that kind of money. The more people that are contributing are going to have their own idea of how to spend that money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you don't do things the way they want, feathers are going to get ruffled, and all of a sudden you're getting fired no matter what your buyout is.
Yeah.
I mean, Texas A&M has kind of become known for that at this point, where you want to talk about stability. How many coaches and athletic directors have they lost?
I think he's going to be their 5th AD since 2012. I think they've had a lot. They've had 4 or 5 ADs since then.
So, yeah, we'll see. Grass ain't always greener. Next question from Bob again. Thank you, Bob. Trev needs to come out and say what is wrong with the leadership here, or he is just a straight up coward and traitor. I've seen calls for that today. Like it's clearly not an AD problem. It's clearly not a head coach problem. It's what is the underlying reason why Nebraska just can't ever get it out of the mud? And I think that's what everybody wants to know right now. And it'd be nice if Trev said all the things that we're kind of speculating on right now. It's like, yeah, it's the fact that the university leadership just isn't there right now, or it's not what I wanted, or the fundraising is just too hard here, or there's all these reasons. I think it's the unknown, the fact that we're sitting here just trying to guess at why he made this type of decision when he did.
The part that's not a guess, I don't think, is the president.
Yeah,
because he cracked on that a little bit.
He did. But
otherwise, yeah, I don't know. We don't know if.
But what else was in play?
Well, the other things, there are some things we're not guessing on the president, and we're not guessing on that he had he had designs on that college football playoff job, and that even the Big Ten commissioner job, he expressed interest. Those are real. So again, it's still though. Look at that. He looks perfect as a Nebraska AD. 2.5 years in. That's what it is with me, Robin. It's just the tenure was too quick.
Yeah. Well, and so let's briefly reflect on that. Like, so he was here for only 2.5 years, but can you make the argument that Nebraska athletics are in a better position 2.5 years later than they were when he was hired. Are Nebraska athletics better when he left than when he arrived?
Can I simplify this a little
Sure.
bit? Most ADs, you just judge on football coach hire and basketball coach hire. You didn't hire Fred, hired Rule. Too early to say.
But he kept Fred when there's a
He
lot
did
of
keep-
other
that's
athletic
true.
directors that would have said, you know what, I want my guy.
Yep.
This isn't working. And he had plenty of evidence to say this isn't working.
Yeah, he did.
And
And
he stuck it out.
you're right. That's a good point. He made a good decision there. And we think he made a good hire on Matt Rule, but they're 5-7.
Yeah, to be determined.
Yeah.
But all signs point to it
Yeah.
being headed in the right direction.
Did he leave it better? He had the big,
I say yes.
he had the bash, the 92,000 people in Memorial Stadium for the
Yeah.
volleyball.
I mean, just look what Nebraska volleyball's become.
But it was already that.
But I mean, to that level, though. The volleyball day in Nebraska thing, like, I think took it to that next level, to where Nebraska volleyball didn't just become a Nebraska story or a college volleyball story. It became a national story.
It was his vision on that, I think.
Yeah.
I if John Cook's watching this, he might be saying, wait a second here.
He at
But I
least
do
signed
think,
off on it,
yeah, I do think it was largely Trev's vision. And that's big. Going back to your question, did he leave it better? I don't say
2001,
markedly better,
from the
but
spring of 2021.
let's say maybe. I'd have to think about that a little bit more.
Surface level, I say yes.
Okay.
Just because of the direction of the two sports that you're talking about. I
Mhm.
do think football feels, the evidence is still to be determined, but I think the feel around football is significantly better.
No question.
And I think
There's no question about that.
The feel around Nebraska men's basketball is significantly better.
No question.
So if that's your criteria, I think.
Yeah, you're probably, you know what? You've swayed me. I'd say it's better.
But then, the flip side of that is all that work and all the progress that they've made in 2.5 years, and now you're leaving.
Hence the frustration
Yeah.
you're going to see here as we
Yeah.
go forward. What else you got?
All right, Megan, what's next? From Zeus Gucci.
There you go.
Regardless of the Board of Regents, he deserted Nebraska. Yep. And that goes back to the feeling of the betrayal. The fact that he is a true Husker. You know what I mean? Like, he's the guy that when you put the Mount Rushmore of Nebraska football players, he's in that conversation.
Buckus Award winner.
Yeah. I mean, he is one of the faces of one of the most storied programs in college football.
Yeah, this is amazing.
And he came here and he did so many positive things, and there was just such positive momentum, and everything seemed to be headed in the right direction. And then he just up and leaves.
What we're talking about, an amazing story right now.
I mean, it's really incredible. The more you kind of dissect it,
Yeah, the more you
layers
look at
to
him,
this.
the more. I mean, let's. And I want to humanize this a little bit from our perspective. How is our perspective after staring at our computers for 9 hours? I mean, it's all sort of a blur to me right now, and it often is. Around here, everything seems like a blur most of the time. But I mean, there's been so much change, massive change, and here we are, massive change
once again, and probably the biggest change yet. Consider they need press.
And you know what I hope?
AD.
What I hope is that Rule sort of digs in and says, you know what? There's a lot of uncertainty. There's not going to be any uncertainty with me.
Well, and he did make a tweet today.
Did he?
And it was just a video of the God Made a Farmer on the 8th day. God Made a Farmer, and he played that audio with just a bunch of like old school Nebraska football highlights, kind of transitioning, and it said 8/31/2024. To me, that says I'm here. I'm focused on this season.
God, I hope so. I hope he's like that. I hope maybe he takes this as almost like a challenge. Like, yeah, it's not good right now. There's not great leadership, but there's great leadership here. And think about how powerful that head coaching position is at Nebraska.
It's huge.
Yeah, he's powerful.
You're one of arguably the biggest figure in the state.
Right. So he can really help this situation by being, I would say, being himself, because he's a natural leader, it seems like. And you know what? To a lesser extent, Fred, I think, and John Cook.
Yeah, definitely John Cook.
Yeah, I think that they can help this too. Take ownership. I'm always of the mind, Robin, and it's not, I don't have perfect takes, but I always look at it like Rule's in charge of football, Cook's in charge of basketball or volleyball. Fred's in charge of his program. You don't need a great boss if you're doing your stuff right.
Yeah, it should be a kind of well-oiled machine that just kind of takes care of itself.
Right.
And the AD is just overseeing it,
Right.
and making the bigger picture type of decisions.
Right. I
do think that that's still there.
I think so. I think those are all veteran coaches.
Oh yeah.
These aren't young guys.
Rule just got here, but I think that he's been transformative in this athletic department. I mean, we've talked so much about his impact on just the cohesiveness within the athletic department, between sports, the fact that other sports are rallying around each other. And I think that's a huge influence from Matt Rule. I mean, that wasn't happening before.
No,
and how many times does Scott Frost go and throw the bones on the big screen at PBA, or go to a gymnastics meet, or watch a wrestling meet? You know, like those types of things. You got basketball players showing up to volleyball games. You know, I mean, all sorts of things. Like the connectivity within the athletic department, I don't think has been this strong in a long, long time. That is going to be critical during this huge moment of unknown and transition Nebraska's about to embark on.
Doesn't have to go away either.
No.
I mean, you don't
just keep it going.
Right. You don't have
Find
it doesn't
somebody
have to
that can just keep the ball rolling.
This guy, I mean, Rule's 49, Cook's 60 plus, Fred's 48, right? They're all seasoned coaches. They can handle this.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and Rhonda Revelle is a seasoned coach. Amy's pretty seasoned. There's seasoned coaches throughout the athletic department. They really have to take ownership and not use this as, oh God, what are we going to do? I think that's important. Let's take some more questions.
We got a bunch of live chats here, Megan. Who do we got next here? From Brian Johnson. Thank you, Brian. Do you think the women's basketball issue has any part of this? And Sip, you touched on this. I'm sure it does, to a degree. How much of a degree?
How much of a degree?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's an issue that has not gone away, and it seems to only be getting worse, or becoming more of a distraction issue, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, it's serious.
And Trev's name is on that lawsuit.
It is.
And you know how much of that played into this decision? I don't know. I think that there are bigger issues, for more incentive for him to make this move, but that probably didn't help matters when he's weighing the pros and cons of staying or leaving.
Talked to a lot of people today, and there's mixed reaction on that. I talked to an attorney who said, come on, Steve, lawsuits get filed against universities all the time. That's not an issue. Talk to other people who say Trev wanted more support from his superiors throughout this situation. And then the civil lawsuit drops last month. And now there's it could get pretty dicey. And I think he wants some support. Maybe he didn't feel like the support was where he wanted it. Hard to say how much of a factor it is, but that is a bombshell lawsuit, and it's not going to go away.
Yep. All right, what do we got next? We got one from Corey Stanton. Thank you, Corey. John Cook, your next Nebraska AD.
Surprised me.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me either.
No, it would surprise me.
You would.
Yeah, it would surprise me greatly at this point.
You think so?
Yeah. I don't.
Well, his name keeps getting thrown around.
I don't see it.
Even as an interim?
I could see as an interim, not a full-time AD.
Why not?
Age, partly. I mean, he's talked about why he didn't do it. I mean, he was heavily considered the last, when they hired Trev. I don't think, I mean, he's got a house in Wyoming. He spends a lot of time there. This job now is a bear. It's a bear.
Oh yeah. Especially right now.
Yeah. It's a multifaceted bear. And I don't think John want to do it.
Yeah. It's a whole new world that you got to be ready to adapt and start playing a whole new ball game.
You think John wants to go fundraise?
Yeah.
I mean,
most coaches don't.
This is a really hard job. I mean, you wonder, you just wonder about that Memorial Stadium renovation project now, whether it'll even go forward.
Yeah, I know. That's a huge issue.
Right.
Speaking of which, the Wheelman stadium expansion canceled, ?
No, it's not canceled now.
Yeah, as far as we know.
No, I don't think it is. I haven't heard anything to suggest it is. The fundraising is ongoing, and there's a lot of work to do there, and it's not going to be easy. It's not.
No,
not going to be easy.
It was already a challenge back when the guy that was kind of running the whole project was on board. Now he's gone.
Right.
I think it's, if nothing else, it's going to be put on pause.
Yeah, perhaps.
For the, I mean, like, what do they do here? Because I mean, they're talking about doing construction here really soon, like within the next year, right?
Right. But no, to answer the question though, it's not canceled. It's not. There's no. I mean, Trev was just talking about it last week. Now there'll be some moves this summer if it goes forward, because they'll have to go during the planning stages. They'll have to go in front of the Board of Regents, and there's a meeting. They're talking about going before the Board of Regents this summer.
Okay.
Trev was talking about that the other day. So now, I mean, I get why you asked the question, but Robin, I just think instead of conjecture, we just say, as of tonight, no, it's not canceled.
Okay, that's something to watch.
Yeah.
All right, from Nate Amick, $5. Thank you, Nate. Complete slap in the face of everything he claimed to love. Should be celebrating basketball success. Regents or not, zero excuse how he handled the timing. And the timing does bother me. I mean, just the fact that
I know.
You could have waited until April, to do
well, I don't
something.
know.
Maybe he couldn't.
A&M has some control
right,
on that.
Right. But for Nebraska's side of it, not only are they left without the face of their athletic department, now it's just this huge distraction. It takes a lot of the steam and positivity away from what has been an excellent basketball season for both the men and women. And because now, I mean, here's an example. You and I just sat in these chairs and did a live one-on-one interview with Fred Hoiberg. It was supposed to be this really super cool 15-minute sit down with the head coach going into Minneapolis. And it was a great interview. I highly encourage you to check it out if you haven't done it. But it immediately got bumped. So like total obscurity on our site because of this. And I think that's kind of just an example of what this day has been, where we got an email earlier about the spring football press conference, so we're starting like getting ready for spring ball to start up. Things are going to get rolling there. Got basketball rolling. And nope. Nebraska's leadership is in complete disarray.
Now, hold on though. I'm going to try to make this sound a little bit more positive. Robin, it all's done today. It's Wednesday. Okay. Nebraska doesn't play till Friday. The news cycle spins fast nowadays. Things get put in a rearview mirror faster than I've ever seen in my life.
It's true.
In my lifetime, I've never seen the news cycle spin so fast where you just move that. You move that. Today's Wednesday. Nebraska doesn't play till 8:00 on Friday.
Yeah.
I don't know if it will be marred that much. I think today it is.
Yeah.
It sucks today. Yeah. But I think by Friday, I think there'll be a charge. I think Fred and that group of guys can galvanize the fan base.
Yeah. I mean, it could be a rallying point.
Yeah.
Where
Absolutely it can.
Fans need this team
for the fans mainly. For the fans.
I mean, I would preach that. But listen, like there's a lot of hurt Husker fans right now, and they're going to be latching on to you.
Yeah.
Like, what more motivation do you need?
Rob, I think by Friday night, Husker fans will still be stewing, but they'll be ready for something else.
Exactly.
They'll be ready for something else.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
All right. Next question from Jamie. This one, Jaime. This one feels different. Seems like a referendum on our quote unquote leadership. Are we further away from championships than we think? And no. And the reason why is because the coaches that are leading those teams are still here. Now, that conversation can change quickly if suddenly next offseason Matt Rule gets wooed away by some other job or whatever it may be.
Or Fred.
Or Amy or whoever, like John Cook. Like, you don't know. That's kind of the concern right now, is just what is the future impact of this going to be. But right now, as we talk today, those coaches are still here and they're still coaching up their teams. Matt Rule is geared up for football. He's geared up for spring ball. Fred Hoiberg is great, getting ready for a critical postseason, a potential program defining postseason. Same thing with the women's squad. And so, I mean, I do think that while this is a massive shakeup for Nebraska, the fact that the coaches are so aligned, that there does still seem to be a high level of cohesiveness within the athletic department from the coaches' standpoint.
Yeah.
That is,
I think it matters.
That makes me less doom and gloom about just the immediate impact of all this. But again,
right,
that can change quickly.
Is it a referendum on university leadership? I do think that. I do think there's that element of this conversation is very real.
Basically said as much.
Yeah. They didn't. Yeah. I just think that president issue is very real to him. They had the structure in place that would have been perfect. Now, I guarantee you there's fans cussing Ted Carter too. Yep. I mean, Ted Carter just shocked everybody, shocked the governor.
To go to a conference rival.
Yeah, shocked everybody. He put this, Ted, I mean, it's hard not to be really critical of him right now because
he caught Trev off guard.
Caught Trev off guard, caught the governor off guard, caught everybody off guard. I mean, he got what he wanted and then left. I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't like to criticize people for being upwardly mobile. And that's what both these jobs, Robin, Ted Carter going to Ohio State, upwardly mobile.
No doubt.
Trev going to Texas A&M, I'd say probably upwardly mobile.
In some regards, I think. I do think that place can get extremely toxic. And they got a lot of money, but there's a lot of strings attached to
and they haven't done anything in football.
That's what I'm saying. Like what puts them on a better plane than Nebraska?
It's just a money thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to say that. It's a strong athletic department there. Proud tradition, Robin. I mean, they got a proud tradition.
If you want to look at it as an upward step, I think it goes back to your point about Trev's bigger aspirations. That now he can add SEC commissioner.
Yeah. What
Big Ten commissioner.
Yeah. What a resume.
I mean, suddenly that resume is going to pop out a little bit more on the desk of whoever you're applying for your next job.
Yep.
All right. What do we got next, Megan? Pseudonym Anonymous 123. Thank you. Trev was a good AD. Everybody yesterday would agree. He handled the exit poorly. Trev is a symptom, not the cause. Journos need to do autopsy on this. And that kind of goes into the overlying question of why, because you're exactly right. If we're having this conversation yesterday, everything is great. Nebraska is just rolling. Trev is just, everything he touches turns to gold. He's got this vision. Nebraska's on the right.
Slow down on that. I mean, you got that civil lawsuit. Oh, I mean, right.
Oh yeah. That.
And that fundraise, we don't know how the fundraising's going, but it's not. Yeah. So no,
you always bring me back down to earth.
Yeah. He's not everything, but no, I agree though with that. He was a good AD yesterday. I agree with that.
He was.
I don't go too far with it.
I also agree that the exit was handled extremely poorly.
Yep. Delve into that a little bit. Why do you say that?
I mean, just the fact that everybody on Nebraska's side seemed to be completely blindsided by this. I mean, like not just us or the fans, but like his direct employees, his bosses, like all the people that matter within the university and athletic structure had no idea this was
people
happening.
Over him and people under him. Correct. I talked to people under him who had no idea.
Correct. And so it's just sneaky.
Yeah.
Sneaky to me. And I get it. That's just how that's business.
Yeah. Some of it is just built in, right?
Your feelings are going to get hurt when you're trying to move up, climb the ladder, but you're hurting the feelings of the people that are supposed to be your own.
I know.
That's what, like, if this was
exactly right.
If this was Bill Moose doing it or Sean Eichhorst, everybody's like, yeah, screw that guy.
Right.
This is Trev Alberts.
It's more personal.
This is Trev.
Yeah. It's more personal.
It stings.
It really does.
It does.
I mean, yeah. I guarantee you there's a lot of people like me out there that it hasn't even sank in for me. It hasn't. No. We got hit by a 2x4 today.
We all did.
Yeah.
Okay, Megan, what's next? Corn Husker, thank you. Do you think there will be a good athletic director that sees this as an opportunity with our program seeming to be on the upswing? I do. I still think Nebraska is a very, very good job, especially with the trajectory that it's now on course, or at least seemingly on course. Like with the momentum behind football, you have your coach that everybody's rallied behind. You have support, financial, to what level as far as the fundraising is concerned to be determined, but things are at least headed in the direction of, really upgrading facilities even further and staying competitive on the elite scale nationally in that regard.
There's a Big Ten job.
Yeah. And I mean, you got a basketball team that's off and rolling in the Big Ten. I mean, there's a lot of good vibes around Nebraska athletics still. And so it's not like you're completely having to start from ground zero here. And I think that makes it a lot more appealing because you have all that comes with Nebraska, and you're also at a much higher starting point than maybe you were even when Trev took over in 01 or 21.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I just wonder what you do with that stadium project. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, we keep saying 450 million, but it's more like 600 million.
Right.
Robin?
That's what Trev kept saying. He was like, we're putting these numbers out there, but if you've ever done anything with construction, you know that initial estimates are always exceeded.
What do you do with that project? What do you do with it?
Again, we don't get paid enough to make that decision.
Okay.
All right, David Jorgensen. If pay is not an issue, people leave people, not jobs. Leadership is to blame. And yep.
Wow, hey, David, we owe you $5. If pay is not an issue,
send Sip your Venmo.
People leave people, not jobs.
Yeah.
So he's blaming the university leadership.
Yeah. And again, I think that we've kind of echoed that same sentiment where
I think it's a factor.
Just Nebraska's just instability and the flux of their university leadership and Trev's bosses, and the fact that he doesn't feel like he has the level of support needed during what he called a critical juncture, not just for Nebraska, but for college athletics. Like, you need to have a system within your leadership in place where everyone is 100% in line with the same thinking, the same goals, and pulling the rope the same way. And right now, that's just not there.
Well, he didn't have a direct boss.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think he feels. I mean, the chancellor had little effect on him. Rob, I go back to Ted Carter.
Yep. Just think of the way that they restructured the power.
I know,
for the president,
right?
Because of Ted Carter.
Well, Ted Carter orchestrated it and then left. Okay, I mean, if you're looking to point fingers,
sabotage.
It's not unfair. I mean, I hate to do it, but Ted Carter, if you're wants to direct some anger, am I out of line to say some of it should be directed?
If he's here, Trev Alberts is still here.
Yeah.
Zero question.
But again, I hate it when I contradict myself. He moved to a better job.
Yeah.
Ted Carter.
And so, yeah, it goes back to,
move to a better job.
What's number one?
Yeah. Does it have to be that way when you're 60 some years old, though? I mean, I don't know. You got to reconcile all that in your mind. And my take would be no. I mean, Ted Carter's a naturally aggressive, competitive person, and he's not going to just quit competing now. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a form of competition, continuing to get better, continuing to get better.
I mean, the reality is Ohio State is among the gold standards of college athletics.
And should we expect him to turn that job down because of loyalty? Mm-hmm. I mean, loyalty.
Interesting.
I don't know. Yeah. With Trev, I'm going to go back to 2.5 years. I just would have expected him to be here, serve
with everything that he said during those 2.5 years,
serve longer.
Yeah.
I don't mind saying that. 2.5 years. It's not very long, Robin. That's a blip on the radar.
It really is. Another one from Joel Rogers. Thank you, Joel. Was not supposed to be announced until Monday. Houston Chronicle jumped the gun. Regents and lack of continuity between what they all want is why. Interesting. I have not heard.
Yeah, the Regents. I don't know where all that fits. The Regents. It's in that leadership discussion. Mm-hmm. And what did Trev think about the leadership? Was there something going on with the Regents as it applies to the presidential search that didn't sit well with them? That they were eyeing a candidate, maybe, or some Regents were eyeing a candidate that he wasn't comfortable with. Mm-hmm. That's very possible, from what I've heard. All of that, I think that's what the fans here are. We're referring to this, blame the leadership. I think that's a definite, maybe the overriding factor. Might be the overriding factor.
I agree. All right, what do we got next? David Jorgensen.
Mac
Rhodes. Come on up. Mac Rhodes,
think, Rob?
Current Baylor athletic director. Makes a lot of sense because when Mac Rhodes took over at Baylor in 2016, who did he hire? Matt Rule. So a established relationship there with arguably the most important member of your staff as an athletic director. Mack Rhoades makes a lot of sense. And it's not just his work with football. I mean, Baylor basketball is a national power.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look across the board of what Baylor athletics has become over the last 8 years. I mean, they were already kind of on the upward track in the early 2010s,
Mm-hmm.
but really, I would say over the last, like I said, 8 years or so, they've become a staple with football and then with men's basketball. So it makes a lot of sense.
Mack Rhoades makes a lot of sense. I'll tell you why else he makes sense to me, Rob. I like his resume. He's been at different spots. Akron, you wrote it. Akron, Houston, Missouri.
Yes.
Think about the different experiences he's had. Akron, Houston, Missouri, Baylor. I mean, you pick up a lot of wisdom when you go to places that are that disparate. So Rhoades is intriguing for sure. He is very intriguing.
All right. Up next, we have Mike. Who are some names you're thinking are or should be considered? Ed Stewart is a name I've heard. Yes, Ed Stewart, kind of the annual name on all the AD hot boards. He seems like he's been there for the last like 3 cycles.
Yep.
Certainly. And especially now that he spent 16 years working with the Big 12 in their
associate commissioner.
Yeah. And now in 2022, I believe, Ed was hired as the Executive Senior Associate Athletic Director for Football Administration at USC, who is joining the Big Ten. So he has that Power 5 administrative experience. It's only a short amount of time, less than 2 years, but he's a Husker. And,
he is.
And he spent 16 years in the Big 12. And now he's working at USC in an athletic director, associate athletic director title. So a lot of credentials there now, where maybe in the last few cycles, he didn't quite have that this USC job, I think, adds to that resume.
It does. The question you would ask with Ed Stewart is, why hasn't it happened? He's always been an associate commissioner. He's an associate athletic director. Why has he been passed over? That's what I would wonder right away. Alan Green is a name you put in your
correct senior deputy athletics director at Tennessee, who just a short time ago was the athletic director at Auburn. So he's got plenty of experience. He was also at Ole Miss as a senior deputy athletic director as well. So he's been around Ole Miss, Tennessee, Auburn. He's a Notre Dame grad, and there's a lot of positive reviews about Alan.
Highly thought of. So I'd watch that one. Those are the good names.
Yeah. And we put out some other names, some of the obvious ones. We talked about John Cook potentially being in there, and you're not as high on that as
I just don't think it's going to. I don't think
maybe in an interim capacity.
I think it's unrealistic.
One name that I am just completely intrigued by, Garth Glissman.
Okay.
Garth, and maybe it's just because he and I went to Nebraska together at the same time, but former Nebraska walk-on quarterback back in the early 2000s. He's a Lincoln native. He's just kind of been around Nebraska sports for a long time. He coached basketball at Parkview Christian, and he eventually in 2016 took a job with the NBA as the senior director of basketball operations, was promoted to associate vice president and then vice president in 2021
of the NBA.
Of the NBA. So, I mean, he's a rapid riser in the industry. And then back in 2023, he was named the SEC Associate Commissioner for men's basketball. So, like, he's like the one or two, or maybe the number 2, maybe number 3 guy in the SEC. And I know, talking to people around SEC territory, if there was ever a commissioner change there, they might consider him for SEC commissioner.
Is that right?
Yes. He is on the fast track.
Is that right?
With this. And this is the one thing I know about Garth. You want to talk about guys that love Nebraska? Garth Glissman loves Nebraska. He wants nothing more than for Nebraska to succeed. And so this isn't some outside candidate who just has a bunch of fancy titles on his name. This is a guy that grew up a Husker, played for the Huskers, still cheers on the Huskers. He goes to games still. And so, like, that's a name that I personally would like to see at least get some traction. We'll see where it goes, but either way, that guy's going to be doing some big things.
We both know him, and his he has a very endearing personality.
Does.
The things you wonder about, can he lead? I mean, can he lead? Can he raise money?
Mhm.
I bet he's in tune with the collegiate landscape. That would be a positive in his favor. I think really just knowing Garth, just his level of humility and his temperament and his personality, I think would work. It's just such a hard leadership job.
It is.
You need a leader in there. And that's, I mean, if I were trying to make this hire, I'd just look hard at leadership, demonstrated leadership, because that's what this is. And temperament's big too. This is a high pressure job here, Rob. This is a high pressure job.
All right, Megan. From Mike Schuster. But did Ted leave because of his upper management regents? Something I believe is bad down there. Something I believe is bad down there. Too many AD and head coaches in the last 15 years. And yes, there have been far too many.
Far too many.
I was talking to you before we started this. It's like, at what point did head football coach changes, athletic director changes, president changes, just like become par for the course? Like, oh, it's been 2 or 3 years, about time to shake everything up.
I know.
And it goes back to my whole thing about, like, one of the biggest reasons why Nebraska athletics have been such a disaster in a lot of respects is because of the instability at the highest levels.
Management.
Upper
level management. I mean, disastrous. I mean, if you think about the disasters that, I mean, going back to Harvey Perlman and Peterson, those were utter disasters of leadership. They were. I mean, there's just demonstrated utter disasters. Eichhorst, just, I mean, what do you say? And so, yeah, no, I'd like to say, again, I'll repeat myself. There's a part of me that always says, don't get another good person in here. But we've seen in Nebraska that you don't know that. You don't know it. We saw Steve Peterson go on a 40-day coaching search. He bumbled it so bad that it was remarkable to watch. I think it actually was 41 days before he settled on, I don't know, the 5th or 6th pick. It can go bad.
Yep.
You know, I mean, Sean Eichhorst unilaterally hired Mike Riley. And we all had hopes, but it turned out to be an utter disaster. I mean, it did.
Yeah. And then with Bill Moose, like, he got the guys that everybody wanted, but it didn't go too well.
No, it didn't
go
well
for Fred now, but man, those first 3 or 4 years were rough.
Frost just turned out to be. So, and this is the amazing thing. When you think you've made the perfect hire, this has happened in Nebraska. We thought Frost was a no-doubter, or a lot of people did. Didn't work out at all. We thought Trev Alberts was, this is the guy.
Yeah.
2.5 years. That's all it was. 2.5 years he's gone. We think you got to be, we have to learn from these things. You think a perfect hire was made? No. You don't know for that for sure. Don't say it because you don't know.
Nope. All right. We're getting short on time here. We're going to blast through.
Yeah, we better get rolling. Yeah.
Super chats. Nate, again, concerned. What AD wants to come if Trev Alberts couldn't make it work? How do you sell another candidate for fans after a guy with his name on the stadium leaves? Yeah. I mean, it's a tough predicament right now.
Yeah.
Because they had their guy. Yeah. Trev Alberts was their guy. Like you said, you just look at a picture of him. Like, he looked what you wanted Nebraska's athletic director to look. He talked like you wanted the AD to talk. He did the things. He made the appearances. Like, everything about how he handled that job was what Nebraska fans wanted out of that position. So again, okay, everything. Keep blasting me on hyperbole. But
yeah, I don't want to make him out to be a demigod, but he did a good job, and he was a guy that you wanted. And again, I think that the person made a great point. Yesterday, we liked him as an AD. We did.
But to the point, I think we both agree that Nebraska is still going to be an alluring opportunity for quality candidates. It's just a matter of getting the right one.
Yeah. It's in the Big Ten.
I know. You got a seat at the table in what is going to be a pretty big separator
with the fervent fan base too. That, I mean, cover a team where we sit there at those games and we marvel at what happens at PBA. We marvel at it.
There's no other place in the country that's selling out a football stadium for a volleyball game.
Right.
I mean, like, there are things that happen at Nebraska that do not happen other places.
Right.
And people around the country see that.
Right. So it is still alluring. These fans, though, can't be taken for granted.
Oh, no.
That you cannot take them for granted. They've been beaten. Oh, they've been beaten down.
Tested a lot for a long time.
It's hard, Rob. I mean, you feel it.
That unwavering support.
Yeah.
Eventually it's going to start to waver.
That's what partly that's a concern in this whole picture. I mean, we're still trying to size it up. This is all very fresh. But man, people have really helped. I mean, we appreciate all those comments and questions.
Joel Rogers again. Yes, that is right, Sip. What you said about who they were trying to bring in. Follow that smoke will lead to the fire.
What'd I say?
I don't know. I can't remember what you said.
Joel. Thank you, Joel. We'll see what happens.
That's right, Sip. Yeah.
Rural roads is alluring to me. Yeah, it does. You just wonder what it would take to get Mac Rhodes here from Baylor. Yep. He's had a good job.
He is. All right, from Scott's Tots. I said this when Rule was hired, and it's only more true now. With each win, Rule is that much closer to Penn State. This shows nobody is a guarantee to stay.
So please don't bring that up. Yeah. That's always, it's on a lot of people's minds, back of their minds, right?
And yeah, as it should be. I mean, that's his alma mater. It's a job that potentially could be coming open very soon. And if Matt Rule starts getting this thing rolling, he's going to have opportunities. People are going to be calling him. NFL teams are going to be calling for him.
Yeah,
high power programs are going to be calling him.
This is painful, so stop. I mean, it's really painful.
Yeah, it's the reality, though. I mean, like, he's one of those guys. That's, old Bill Moose said he had the sheet of names in his desk drawer. There's a lot of ADs and a lot of NFL owners that have Matt Rule's name on that sheet. Especially now, and especially if he can get things rolling here in Nebraska.
That revolving door over there just keeps spinning.
So that's why the AD hire is critical.
Of course.
Critical. All right. What do we got next from David Jorgensen again? Is Dave Remington going to be the filler? JK, I don't see that happening, nor do I.
No.
Yeah, like I said, I think John Cook potentially as a interim, like if you're talking about that stopgap type of hire. There's been some other names thrown out. I'm trying to think of some other ones that could potentially be fillers. Either way, I think if
Bruce Rasmussen, you mentioned
Rasmussen, yeah, he could be a potential guy.
Former Creighton AD. I really, I'm struck by the Garth Glissman conversation because I personally believe, it's just my opinion, that I want someone pretty youthful, 40s, early 50s. I think this job is. I mean, I wouldn't ever rule out someone based on age. I'm not doing that. I'm 58 years old myself, but it just that there's so much energy required. That a guy like Glissman, maybe Ed Stewart, maybe Alan Green, those guys, they're appealing to me in part because of that energy.
Here's an outside of the box, well, not really far outside, but a name that I haven't really heard a whole lot of that we got wind of earlier today. What about Dennis LeBlanc?
Oh.
Dennis LeBlanc, the Executive Associate Athletic Director here at Nebraska, in charge of academics. Now, that would the reason it's outside the box is because he's not he doesn't pride himself on athletics. He's the academic, basically, guru of the entire athletic department. And I do know that he is almost unilaterally respected and liked around every coach. Like the works that he and his staff have done to keep Nebraska kind of at the forefront of athletic academic success has not gone unnoticed. And if you want to talk about a guy that can continue to rally all the coaches around, like, I think he is a potential name as far as that interim position, the stopgap.
Oh, the interim. Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about full.
All right. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
He's already got the associate AD title.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I mean, just a guy that can kind of keep the ship afloat until they bring in somebody.
Well, that makes sense.
That could be a name to keep in
mind. I'd watch that. Well, I think that makes a lot of sense, actually.
All right, Megan, what else do we got?
Luke Gifford tweet.
Luke
I wonder
Gifford
what
tweets.
Luke,
There it is. Business will always be business. Respectfully, though, take it. Luke Gifford has never been afraid to speak his mind, especially once he got out of here. But
he just did.
Yeah. Well, and hey, you think he's the only former player thinking that right now?
Nope.
I mean, there's a lot of guys that like him that completely, it's not just the fans that completely bought into Trev's message and this, we're all together in this for the long haul type thing. Players too. And this reaction is hardly an isolated case.
How about that?
Jacob Grover. Here you go, Sip. Bo Pelini is the front runner.
The front runner for what?
I'm assuming athletic director.
No. That'd be interesting.
What a wild ride that would be. All right. We're going to close out our show and our super chats here with the last one from Zach Foster. Can we just worry about 6 wins, please, in football? Yes. How about that? Can we just talk about sports?
Oh, okay. I'll talk about sports, but my God, are we setting the bar that low?
6 wins. Yeah, well, get there, and then we can move the bar up. How about that?
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's kind of, again, goes back to how just disappointing the timing of all this is. Just because, again, we're just on the cusp of spring football. Right? I know.
Don't let it.
It's just a fun, optimistic time of year.
Just don't let it. I think that I'm serious about this. I'm going to say it again. The news anymore is so rapidly discarded. Kind of. This will move quick. By Friday night, you'll be settled in Minneapolis, and Nebraska fans will be charged up, and that this will be on their minds. But in the front of their minds is going to be a tournament run, a possible tournament run by a team that people have really taken to. So I'm not aligned with you in that thought that this is putting a damper on everything. I don't think it will. I think it did today. I think it will last till tomorrow. By Friday, people will be ready for something. I think that basketball team will take a lot of minds off this.
Yeah. One more from Mike. He says Rule will have a say in the hire.
Okay.
I agree.
I think that he could.
I think he has to.
And you know what? Wouldn't bother me if he does.
Yeah. What are you going to do? Let the interim president make a decision all on his own? No.
Well, that's again. Then the other part of that is, do you have to have a president in place first before you hire an AD?
Yep.
Do you?
I think so.
It seems like
what AD is going to want to come to a school and have no idea who his boss is going to be, especially at a school like Nebraska where the president has so much say in the day-to-day of athletics.
This is why people are talking about the regions. The regions got to get this going. You got to get a president.
Last one here from Huskers for Life. I never thought of hanging up my Husker loyalty, but this just makes me question why I still care if the powers to be don't give a poop. Yeah.
I don't know if it's they don't care.
Yeah. I mean, this just kind of it continues to go back to just the hurt right now. And the fact that guys, lifelong Nebraska fans are questioning, do they want to keep doing this anymore?
Right. It's fresh though.
Yeah. Again, we're hours removed from this officially being announced.
If Nebraska wins Friday night in Minneapolis, people will be jazzed.
Yeah. And I will reiterate, we do get to talk to Matt Rule here on Monday, right?
Oh, yes.
For the press conference.
Yes.
So he hasn't made any public statements as of yet, but if nothing else, we will be able to get his thoughts on the matter on Monday during Nebraska's pre-spring football press conference. We get to talk some football again. It'll be great. The basketball team is playing in the Big Ten tournament, hopefully make a run. NCAA tournament awaits after that. There are still good things to follow with Nebraska athletics. As dark of a day as this may seem, I agree with you, Sip. I think there's still a lot of positives and a lot of lights coming out of this university and this athletic program.
Right. No, I get it. I get where you're coming from. It seems like a pretty rough day, and it is. And I can be overly optimistic about things, a little Pollyanna-ish. But it's not just Fred, it's Amy's team too. There's a lot of good going on. A lot of good going on over there beyond those sports, wrestling, a lot. So I think I think if you're a fan, you got to try to stay positive, but understand there's reality in the discussion that's pretty hard to deal with.
No doubt about it. All right, that'll do it. thank you everyone for tuning in, for all the super chats. And as always, be sure to follow all of our coverage on Husker Online. Sipple and I will continue to hold down the fort. Sean gets back on Friday.
He gets back Friday?
And I guarantee you he will have plenty to say about this matter and everything that awaits Nebraska athletics, Nebraska football, and beyond going forward. Thank you for joining.